So we go from free matter to etheric matter. Then we go to dimensions 6, 5, and 4. That's semi-etheric matter, which means it's half of this and half of that. Now this down here, dimensions 1, 2, and 3, that's the gross matter density. That's that physical stuff that we know we're walking around in here. Now here we have etheric matter. So this is a place in between them, where it's about half as dense as what it's supposed to be here, but about twice as dense as that. This is a whole progression that we live in. The cosmos is structured on this. Every planet has its relation to this. Every body has its relationship to this. And it's called the 15-dimensional time matrix, referring to this part in here, the dimensions 1 all the way up to 15, and then the primal sound fields around it. They're called the energy matrix. There are names for these things. In the energy matrix, if you were going to, let's say, ascend, you would have to pass through from here, all the way, expand up into these, expand, expand, expand. Then you would have to expand from this level, into the next level, into the next level, then into source. That's what ascension is, by the way. It's expansion back into the full pattern. And it first starts with the first 12 levels of your consciousness. The first level is closest to the time matrix and furthest from source as far as the primal sound goes is called the triadic level. And the next one up going towards source is the polaric level. And then the third one going towards source, which is the first step of individuation from source, is called the ecadic level of the energy matrix. These are fields of primal sound. The information stored on the CDD plates, and thus the information that is being translated from those plates, is information from the ecadic memory records. So it is I won't have the contract on taking all of these translations, because there are billions of pages of all sorts of things. But this is the integrity of this material. That's why I come out and I'll speak to people, even though I hate public speaking. I don't go to college because I didn't want to do public speaking. I got my car back. But the information comes from the ecadic level. It has been thousands and thousands of years since we could even get this kind of information on the planet, because there's been a lot of interference with the evolutionary destiny of this planet. It's such a joy to have it back. There's a gratitude that I feel, and that's why I do what I do. It's not to make money. It's not because I wanted to really be involved with the New Age movement, because I really didn't. I know the integrity behind this stuff, and I know what it can do for you. I know what it did for me. At this point, I have probably over 200 of my simultaneous incarnations available to me, where I can shift my consciousness to where they are. And if I do it real careful, I could even paint landscapes. You have parts of you in those other time vectors as well. So this information is coming from way out here. That means the information out here holds all the rest of it. It is the highest level information that anybody can get. And it was given here repeatedly. There are 12 CDD plates that were given to this race as a gift. And there were 12 what we would call religions based on. There were 12 primary religions or spiritual teachings on this planet. Every one of them were coherent with each other. They never conflicted. People didn't kill each other. We usually believe in that God and I believe in this God. This information was the information from the ecadic level stored in 12 different, there are 12 tribes of humans, each appointed as guardians of one block of that information. If we understand the basic structure that we're dealing with and realize that, okay, where we are in this now? We're down here, okay? Now the HU here refers to harmonic universe. A harmonic universe is a system that's built on 3 dimensions. Because the 15-dimensional time makers, once you get into dimensionalization, now remember, these are not dimensional fields. They're just vibration fields. This is where dimensionalization starts. Dimensionalization is a process of breaking down and polarizing certain portions of energy so they can actually stand apart from each other while still being connected. So dimensionalization occurs between dimensions 15 and dimensions 1. In dimensionalization, to create a reality field where an external reality can be known, where you can walk through and see yourself and see an external world and know that kind of manifest program, requires dimensions to be structured in sets of 3. So in a 15-dimensional time matrix, you have 5 sets of 3-dimensional systems. They are called either a density level, so there are 5 density levels, Or they can be referred to as 5 harmonic universes. Harmonic refers to, they're built on sound, light, and tone. And they're harmonic with each other. They each actually have a sound to them. There would be a sound, a cosmic song for this universe. There's one word. There would be another cosmic sound for this one. And this one, this one, this one. There's the silent symphony that makes a huge cosmic symphony that we're all a part of. We learn to use the harmonic universes in terms of understanding our own biological structure. Because just like the cosmic structure, we are microcosmic reflections of that structure. That means you could look at this structure and realize that there are these parts of you that existed as well. Now when we teach the beginning part, the context, we teach you, okay, this is the framework that we all existed in. This is what our galaxy existed in. This is what all of that outer space out there that science can see that goes on forever, that all exists within here. Okay? You know the vastness of space that science tells us is out there, that shows pictures from the Hubble telescope and stuff that shows it just goes on endlessly. They're seeing what's right in here, the universe that goes with these three-dimensional bands. They're missing all this. It's a lot bigger than they realize. Now, when we're dealing with the 15-dimensional structure, we're dealing with an ability, if it's activated, to expand from here into here, which means merging these two universes. We can understand this in terms of our physical bodies as far as soul integration. If this level represented our soul identity, and this was our physical self down here, if you brought those two together, you would integrate your soul. This happens on planetary levels too. Every planet, every body down here will have its counterpart in each of the harmonics above it. It wouldn't be in the lowest density down here in physical matter if it hadn't passed through the other stages of matter to get here. So it implies, this is an implied reality, that by it being here implies it has the structure of subtle energy identity that goes with it. Whatever it is, be it a planet, or a person, or a cockroach, they all have this structure. Yes, so that means animals do have souls. They operate a little different than ours do. They're more connected to actually greater groups of consciousness. I won't get into animal souls right now, but they do have them. Okay. When we begin to work with activating DNA, we begin understanding DNA and those kind of things on a physical level, we will find that we have a DNA strand that corresponds to 1 through 12 of those. If you happen to be what's called an indigo child, that's a New Age buzzword for a certain type of being that's come back on the planet to help assist with this particular time period, you would have anywhere from 1 to 48 strands. That means a whole, all the way up to the atomic level. Your DNA would be encoded to hold frequency from that much level. If we understand the basic structure, this is like a core diagram that we use in many different ways in the Kathara programs and also in other programs to show a basic relationship. If you can understand that's the core structure, there's a lot of other things you will learn to understand. You'll learn to understand what currents you're using when you're healing, because you'll find that each one of these dimensions runs a current or frequency band. Lower ones. This is where words like Kundalini fit in. When you hear about the ancient teachings, usually they're associated with tantric sex teachings, as if Kundalini had nothing else to do with anything else. Actually, that's one of the tiniest things Kundalini has anything to do with. The word Kundalini refers to the primal life force currents from dimensions 1 through 9 that run the body. The current of energy runs through the main vertical current of the body. After that, you get up here, what's called, and we'll cover this more when we get to Kathara too. When we get into the frequencies that run from up here, the D10, 11, 12, that's called the Maharata frequency. And the Maharata frequency is what the Kathara healing program is built on. That is the higher frequency. There's an interesting thing about dimensional structure that we'll show soon when I get into showing you how dimensions are structured. Go to page 23. Thank you. The next graph. Okay, on page 23, you'll begin to see how dimensions are structured. And each one of these guys, right, each one of these little dimensional bands, has a structure you're going to see next. Okay, this is very important when it comes to healing, because this is where you start to figure out, what am I transmitting when I'm healing? If you don't understand your dimensional structure, you're not going to have a clue of what you're transmitting as a healing current to someone else. Okay, now, dimensional structure. We're using here, like, for example, okay, dimensions 1, 2, and 3. That would be one harmonic universe, right? One three-dimensional system. There are 12 primary subfrequency bands. in each of those dimensions. So in one harmonic, you would have 36 sub-frequency bands, or 12 times 3. Now, there's also a chart we'll get to later that builds. These are the primary sub-frequency bands, but they also build, if we have dimension 1, 2, and 3. See, each of them have 12. There's another chart somewhere in there that I won't go for yet, so I'll use that later in the later context. Well, you'll find it not only has its own 12, but also what was below it. So it's 12, 24, 36, 48, where you have 144 when you get up to the harmonic. What did it do? Oh, I have this. I see what it is. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. When you get to harmonic 4, I have these numbered a little bit different. And this is something that it has to do with the flip and angular rotation of particle spin. It's much easier if you just pretend you went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. It means the same thing, but there's something more complicated about why this numbering system is put this way. But anyway, what it's telling you is there's one harmonic universe has 3 dimensions. Each dimension has 12 sub-frequency bands. What they also do is build. So dimension 1 would have 12. Dimension 2 would have 24, its own 12, plus the 12 below. Dimension 3 would have 36, all the way up. This is where you build frequency subharmonics. It's the subharmonics of frequency that you are progressively building when you are learning to activate healing currents that we will get into later. They're called triadic phase currents. And they are the healing currents. Right now on the planet, because it couldn't be done any different until January 1st, 2000, when those special frequencies activated on the planet that I mentioned when I first started. Most healing systems, in fact all healing systems, the most they were able to do was use dimension 1, 2, and 3 frequency subharmonics. No matter how sophisticated their systems, they couldn't pull anything higher from the higher dimensional field. So what they've been doing is counting the subharmonics as full dimensional frequency bands. This is a little trick that some of the other healing systems that are out there, oh, we're on the 540th dimension. Yeah, right? They're using breakdowns of sub-frequency bands and calling them whole dimensions because they don't have access to the whole structure yet. This information hasn't been here for a very long time. And eventually this will be the new paradigm to show you because it is the basic format of how dimensional reality is structured. You can break any group of, any one dimension down. It has 12 primary. You can break it down to its little tiniest parts, and you can get 500 out of one if you want to, but in increments of 12. So this is the basic structure. If you realize we're dealing with that big oval diagram, right? Our 15-dimensional time matrix, and each dimensional band has this basic structure. We start to get an understanding not only the primal substance that everything's created out of, the part K, part Chi, part Cum, the key lines, the key line codes, and the cardioid grids that form the little scalar arrays that flash on and off, that form our templates, but we start to understand the structure of those templates as well. So we start to begin to understand the anatomy of the planet, of the universal structure, because everything in manifest form takes this structure on. It has to, in order to get into manifest form. So this will teach you about yourself, but it will also teach you about your universe. Okay, and we go on to the next one and choose. And there's a lot more in between here. You'll notice these are the pages. Wait, this next one, page 25. These pages have, up in the corner, that little shape right there with another page number. See that? They're the ones I told you about in the beginning of this, where there's a second series of page numbers. So these would be the primary summary ones that you would pull to run a presentation, where there's a lot of pages in between them that give you detail on what's talked about there. So, these are the summary ones. You don't really, I found that a picture paints 1,000 words with this stuff. This is why I take you would not believe the time that goes into these diagrams. These are all hand paste ups because there's so much detail on them that you end up fighting with your computer to try to get to have it put words where you want it and things like that. So these are all done like hand paste ups. But I found it worth it because the picture paints 1,000 words with this. If you can remember that image of the 15-dimensional time matrix, it sticks in your brain. Rather than if you try to memorize 3 paragraphs about what I just said about 15-dimensional time matrices. They're like cues. They're like symbols that are mathematical programs. That if you remember them, they stick in your mind and they hold that information for you in digital form in your cellular memory. So what I suggest to most people, if you really want to integrate, because there's going to be a lot of stuff that by the time you get to the fourth chapter, you probably don't remember what we talked about in the first chapter, because there's so much information to cover. Study graphs, if you want to integrate what we've done here, like during your workshop time. Just use the graphs and the visual pictures, because they are digitally encoded, let's say. That picture holds information in a consolidated way, just like the oyster turret plates hold it in, huge amounts of information in a tiny little package. If you can remember that image will store that data for you, and you'll start to integrate it into your common knowledge. And it's amazing, because after a while, you start to look at everything through that framework. You simply know that everything's 15-dimensional. And the whole world opens up when it starts to happen, because you also realize you have perceptions. Perceptions you can learn to turn on. That will allow you to see more of that range. So you'll end up walking into a room and closing your eyes to see what's going on, which can be really interesting. We're so used to walking around like this, we've turned off all of our higher senses where we can see those other dimensional bands. And unfortunately, that's causing a lot of problems right now on this planet, because there's lots of others out there who do see these dimensional bands, and they operate from some of the middle range ones, and some of them are trying to get control of our stargates here, and they're messing with people. If we can turn on our higher vision, we can simply protect ourselves, because we will learn how to run our own frequencies from D12 down. This is what this program is about, learning how to run Mahara current, D12 current, Christos current, into your body. Because it creates a protection field, first of all, but it does all sorts of other things too. It restores your original divine blueprint, your original premarital blueprint. So, anyway, if we can remember the graphs and the diagrams, they show us the relationships. It's an easy way to store the data in our minds and our brains. At some point, I'd love to do artwork with it. It's just have them, even without the words on them, where they just hold that information for people. So if anybody's an artist who wants to play with that, they can do that. I never have the time. Okay, now, all right, this is kind of the structure of how things manifest. Those, on the other diagram where we have harmonic universe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they're like concentric circles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Levels of expansion, because it's really about expanding.
Coffee and tea.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. We're going to do coffee and tea at 4. Is that what's happening? Okay. Thank you. We'll do a quick coffee and tea break. That's a quick break, and then we'll take at 5 o'clock, we'll do the big dinner that was supposed to be at 6:30. So you can get to your thing. Anyway, this is real important. This simple little thing reminds you almost of a bullseye. This wraps it up in a nutshell of what the whole thing is about, what ascension is about, what your being here is about as far as its structure and its function. It's expansion and contraction. This last area out here that has no definition around it, the source is God. And these, and actually you have one more level here that I didn't show because this is the 15-dimensional one. Right here you have your primal sound, your God and primal sound fields. Here's your time matrix, shown in a very simple way, one inside the other. So you go from the fullest expansion, which would be the primal light fields of dimensions 15, 14, 13, density 5. Then density 4 contracts a little, density 3 contracts 1, 2 contracts more, density 1 is the most contracted. So the process of getting out of density, the process of ascending, the process of getting your eternal consciousness back into your body and your body out of matter is the process of re-expanding back. Simply an expansion process. It's like a breathing rhythm, a cosmic breathing rhythm. And everybody functions on it. Everything from the heart rates and metabolic rates of biological life forms to the cosmic cycles that govern when planets are going to supernova and when black holes are going to form. All of those things are governed by the simple core structures of Kathara and the way it works within matter. Kathara templates are the templates behind all of it. And if we can realize that, life becomes simpler. Not that there's not a lot of detail that would go with this. This is Kathara level 1. There are 211 pages of this. It's a 12-level program. I haven't translated anything levels yet, except a little bit they've recently given me on Kathara level 2, which gets into the Merkaba, advanced Merkaba mechanics and Kundalini mechanics, which is a little bit, I don't know if they're in the backs of the books yet, but they're coming if they're not. Okay? There's a little bit of introductory to Kathara level 2. If we can integrate even this much, we can do huge things with ourselves, with our consciousness. All of a sudden, it's really comforting to know you've never been alone on the planet. First of all, there were 1,728 of you. That collective of yous is called your Christos self. Because as an avatar, to get yourself into the smaller, dense forms down here, you have to break your consciousness up and spread it around, because you can't fit it all in one body. You have these other selves. They're holding part of your knowledge for you. And you'd be surprised when you start to get some of the memory over, which means you're not just remembering them. Your consciousness is opening to perceive through theirs. You're integrating their life cycle. This is what becoming Christ is about. Progressively integrating each of the other levels of your identity. That's why people that teach reincarnation will teach it in the framework of, or like the New Age ones do anyway, where you integrate your other past lives, your other incarnations, you have to integrate them. But they still use that distorted concept of past, it being gone. Past and future lives are right now. And you're a part of that system. So you're here as a fleet. If you ever feel lonely, and if you're letting the world out here push you around, feeling like you're just a nothing, so you really don't have it, for you to, ruffle the feathers of anybody. We get into these postures here where we let people push us around, where we let society push us around, and get us to do things with our time and our energy. It has nothing to do with what matters to our hearts. If you start to realize, hey, I'm a fleet. I'm an avatar. I forgot. It's like, there's a part of you that wakes up. And the have two parts. One, the little part says, oh, I'm not. I couldn't do. No, not me. Or, oh my gosh, God can get mad at me by thinking that. I wouldn't want to be, overextend myself and be, full of ego or anything. We're taught to not let ourselves remember. If we can begin to remember this stuff, life becomes a lot more fun. First of all, no matter where you are, count back. Say you're walking into a war or something, right around the battlefield, and everybody's going to shoot you. You know you're just going to die. You can do something in that moment. You're like, okay, rest of me. I know you're there. Any suggestions? And then you're coming to a situation where you're either getting an understanding, oh, I decided to check out this way, it's time to leave, or something miraculous would happen. And it wasn't the big hand of some God that decided to like you temporarily, came down and helped you. It was your own self helping you shift things, because you left the opening, the window for it, by acknowledging that the rest of that self exists. And that's the self of you that's connected to God directly. That's the I am presence. If you can reclaim this in yourself, you don't get pushed around by life anymore.
Can I tell you a story?
Okay.
I was with Phil, and I said, I want to connect to my 12th DNA strand. I'm driving. I looked to the left, and big letters that said EURO, Euro Master.
We call that waking dream, okay? We have things called waking dreams sometimes. Well, first of all, you start to realize it's all a dream. It's a hologram. This means it's not so bad when you start to realize it. Well, heck, if it's not that bad, it's just a dream. You can make dreams go away. You can make them change. I don't like that in my dream. Well, I'm going to fix it. You start to realize you have the power to do this. You won't have the power by wishful thinking. And that's one of the deceptions that's being taught in the New Age movement. Just think, therefore I am. Yes, I think I'm God right now, and I'm going to poof right before your eyes. They still stand there. I haven't seen one of them disappear and stay gone. And then come back later and say, see, I told you I could. There's paradigms that are being taught there that are giving lip service to the desired outcome, but they're not teaching you the mechanics that are necessary. These are the mechanics of Christ consciousness. But if you want the mechanics, if you want to have Christ consciousness, you have to understand how to use the mechanics. Do they think Christ didn't know these? Did they think the person who became known as Jesus Christ didn't have this knowledge? But they say, oh, that's just lower intellectual stuff. You don't need to know this stuff. No, you just hail Archangel whoever, and it'll fix it for you. Run. When you hear these paradigms, you're such a punch. Okay? This is a way to get you to surrender your power and take you away from the knowledge that you would be able to reclaim your own power inside of yourself. Okay? Were you at that point? I'm getting signals. No. Okay. What time? How long do we have praying for the...
15 minutes.
Oh, we have that one? Okay, good. Okay.
Sorry,
anyway.
the actual coffee's there.
It's out.
It is out.
It is out, yeah.
Well, okay. It's not like any colder.
No, it's in the thermos.
No. All right. Do you want to walk the break now?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay, we've got, where do we do, like 10, 15 minutes, 15 minutes?
5.
All right. Okay. The other stuff is more fun. The other things we'll learn in Kathara chapter 2, which we'll start with tomorrow, are the parts of your life that correspond to these things. And we'll have things, it's not all going to be just going through and listening to me talk to you. We're going to have what's called clinics, where once we learn about the points in the body that can be used and stimulated to start to run energy in certain ways, we're going to have clinics practicing these kind of things. And as far as there are 5 primary techniques in Kathara level 1, we will have time to practice those all together as like one large technique, as if you were giving a client session. This is what you would do. We'll have like one person play client, one person play, facilitator, and then switch off. So there's going to be, you're not going to be glued to a seat, the whole time. I do want, we're on the hardwood floor in here. It may be good to keep this in mind for, we bring some kind of something that you could lay on, not for today, but for, I think tomorrow we have a clinic. Yeah, because usually we have a carpeted room. And it's easy to lay on the floor. I'm sure the clinics are. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, tomorrow morning we would start with one of the easier ones. The laying down one is tomorrow evening, I believe. So if you can, tomorrow when you come, bring some kind of, pad or blanket that you could, fold into or a sleeping bag or something, so you don't have to, lay down on the floor and hard stuff and it hurts. That kind of thing. The purpose of going through the motions, of not just hearing the theory and how to do it, but taking you through something like you would need to go through if you were going to facilitate healing for someone. It's ingraining it more. If you can talk to somebody and tell them something, but they don't own that yet. Where you own it is when it becomes a part of your cellular memory and you actually move through the experience of it. So there's a big difference between learning something just with the brain and moving through it with the body. And this goes for anything. I mean, you can be explained about how to ride a bike, and every technical detail could be explained to you, but until you get on a bike and start to feel the balance and start to make it work, you don't know how to ride a bike. So the reason we do the clinics, and I wish we had the ability to have nice little comfortable cots for everybody and stuff, but it wasn't available to do that. It's worth it. It's not that I want you to drop down on the floor getting dirty. It's I really want you to be able to have had the experience of, okay, I do this and this makes this energy run, and I do this with this. So you really get a feel for what it's about. Now, for today, we'll be doing the theory. We'll be finishing more of the theory. So we have an understanding by the time it's time to employ the theory of what it all means. So it's not just going through the motions of something that you don't understand, because that's pretty useless too. Yeah, I think on page 12. Okay, I'll need 13 up there, please. We just got done talking about, before we had a little fiasco of trying to find out what it really was, part of our phasing, and we left off with that set of concentric circles, or 5 circles inside each other, and the expansion and contraction of consciousness through the matter density levels. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, each representing an expansion of the morphogenetic field, or your core template, each representing expansion of consciousness, each representing one of the density levels of matter. And this is part of universal structure as well as personal structure. Now, we're going from that, and I'm going to go on into this section, and it's in each of the chapters. There are 4 primary chapters in Kathara level 1. At the end of each, there is a highlights section. It's the highlight section that to go through to get each of the points that would be useful to help people to really understand what this information is about. These are the points that you would teach. So I have these with the little numbers up there, so you pull them and make milars like this, or transparencies like this. And then what I like to do is I'll read it, and then I'll talk to you about what that means. These are the points that if you lose anything, as far as what we've talked about, what the heck did that mean? You have it right there in the highlight section in your own text. You can go back and say, oh, okay, that's what a particle means, or oh, that's what that means. So it's there, so you don't have to retain all of it. But it's important, because each piece of information is interesting about this program. Each piece of information is provided in a way that creates a mathematical sequence of data. If we look, then it's a little bit more advanced, but I'll give this to you now because I think it's helpful to understand why we teach this the way we do. It goes into the DNA template, which is the scalar wave template behind the manifest chemical DNA. The DNA is what allows for frequency to come into the body, the DNA template. Now, if we have certain parts of the DNA blocked, that means certain information is not going to make sense to us. And it will sound like gibberish. If it's given to us, even if it's in our language, we won't be able to get the concept. If the information is coming from a higher frequency of consciousness than what the DNA template can hold. So this information from page 1 running through is sequenced in a way that it will progressively, each page is a piece of information, particularly on these that are sequenced in words, where there's not pictures to look at, which are more fun. But these are sequenced in a way that progressively builds up frequencies. So your DNA template temporarily will activate, which means it will come to life, dormant parts of it will come to life to allow those little bits of frequency to form a nice little chain of frequency that makes a bridge for the conceptual understanding to come through. So there's a reason why the program is formatted in the way that it is. It's not just to bore you with, words up here that you could easily just read in your book. It helps if you want to understand Kathara healing, and you really want to become good at it, where you really feel the frequency running, and you start to really say, this is real, it's not just words, this is like energy, which you can't get to with this program. It helps to understand that it's formatted in a way that takes in mind the nature of your own biology and consciousness. It's really important for anything to realize that the DNA template, which is the scalar wave pattern or template blueprint behind the chemical DNA that's part of our greater subtle anatomy, that regulates how much consciousness we can hold in our bodies, period. Right now, if our soul level of consciousness corresponds to dimensions 4, 5, and 6, but we only have up to 3 to 3.5 or 3 to 3.5 strands activated, we do not have our soul awareness embodied. It's with us hanging in our auric field, but we cannot plug it in to know it until the biological DNA carries the chemical carriers that will allow frequency or electrical impulse to pass through the brain in certain ways that allows that cognition to come to us. So that's why we work with, in Kathara healing, we work with an understanding of the DNA template and its translations into the chemical DNA, because everything you might want to understand depends on your vessel. It's like having a pitcher of water in a small cup of water. You can only get so much of that water from the pitcher into the small cup. The rest will just overflow and it just won't go into the cup. If you want to be able to hold that whole pitcher of water, you need to be able to expand the vessel you're trying to pour it into. Your DNA template is that vessel. So whenever we do, like sequencings of that and like this, it's to help you progressively activate in sequence. This would be taking it into strand 4. Okay? We're going from strand 3 to 3.5. The information here, if you could look at it with higher sensory perception, looks like little symbol codes. It's not in English at all. It's a mathematical grid of instructions that talks to the body's template. It says, open this, allow this cognition to come through. Open this, allow this cognition to come through. So there is a method to the madness of why the programs are sequenced this way. Now, the first point says, vibratory oscillation rate within a dimension determines the angular rotation of particle spin, or the rotational axis of particles in a dimension. What does that mean? Okay, the vibration, the energy holding in particles, or the oscillation, the energy expenditure. The vibration, the turning off of little scalar columnar waves in a template, or the oscillation, the turning on of little scalar waves. Those functions of physics that are part of the unseen biology, they determine the angles that our particles rotate on. Now, I talked about earlier briefly that the angle your particles rotate on will determine what time vector your body appears in. And if you want to be able to move through time vectors and pass them to others, you have to be able to make flexible your angular rotation of particle spin. There are certain things that hold it fixed right now, that literally have imprisoned us in our contemporary time frame, where we don't even remember once upon a time we were able to move through time bands and have that kind of flexibility. But there's a direct relationship between vibration and oscillation, energy holding or energy contraction, and energy transmitting or expansion, and the rotational axis of your particle in the atomic structure. There's a 90-degree shift in angular rotation of particle spin between each dimension. All right, so if we have dimensions 1, 2, and 3, right, in that dimensional scale, or 15-dimensional scale, dimension 1, 90-degree shift. Dimension 2, 90-degree shift. Dimension 3. Then something else happens. Then there's a 45-degree shift, reverse shift, in between harmonic universes. Now, harmonic universes, we recall, are the 5 groups of 3 dimensions, right, that form a reality field that can be externalized. Between each of those 5, there's a 45 reverse shift, which brings you to a 45. Okay, if you have 90-degree shift between each, 90-degree shift, angular rotation of particle spin between each dimension, but then that one goes back 45, you end up with a 45-degree shift. So what this is just telling you is there is a degree of shift in the angle of particle spin as from one dimension to another. Our bodies, our 3-dimensional bodies, are literally created with 3 different levels of particles on 3 different rotational axes. That's what gives us the 3-dimensional hologram that we're living. So these things tell you some of the science that's involved. You can still use the principles, and you can still work with the things that are easier without being able to remember this off the top of your head or really even integrate it. This is the detail. And they say that God is in the details. Sometimes it is very, very true. Right? These little details will fill in the blanks where your mind says, what does that step mean? Well, if you have a series of information that gets you to the point where what you're trying to understand makes sense, that's why this is put in here. Okay? So we need to just understand that there's a shift in the angular rotation of particle spin between each dimensional level in the cosmic grid, in the time matrix, and within everything manifest within it. The next one. Particles have varying vibratory oscillation rates, and angular rotation of particle spin allow multiple 3-dimensional reality fields to coexist in the same space while remaining perceptually and experientially invisible to each other. What that is basically telling you is that it's because of the difference in angular rotation of particle spin that a myriad of different reality fields all take place in the same space, but they are invisible to each other and pass through each other. And while you're in one, you don't see the others unless you integrate its particle spin as well. It's all happening in the same space. We get the holographic projection of time, space, and distance between objects through the intrinsic processes of manifestation that are run through the Kathara grid, that are run through differences in vibratory oscillation rates, that are run through angular rotation of particle spin. So even when we send our spaceships up and they can go light years away and tell us the distant galaxies, that's very real as far as looking at the illusion from the illusion. But when you look at what's making that perceptual experience, it's like a virtual reality program that we're literally, this is like the virtual reality program. There's a part of us that's aware that it's all a virtual reality program. It's all a dreamscape that we're walking around in. We have space where actually everything is taking place all in one space. We get the illusion of things being spaced out from each other. It can be like taking a unified field of energy. Pretend they're like light bulbs, all light bulbs turned on, just one field of light. Then you turn certain light bulbs off, and it creates breaks in them. And if you have a circle of light bulbs that all together form a circle of light, if you cut certain light bulbs out and turn them off, it would make light patches and dark patches, light patches and dark patches. It would make it look like, say if you did it vertically, that there were stripes instead of a circle. This is how reality is being constructed, and we're a part of it, every one of us, on a daily basis. This is the subconscious stuff that's going on with us. We create what we'll experience by what programs or what thought ideas, which a thought is a thing. A thought forms a scalar grid that draws to a frequency to fill it out in matter. So on a daily basis, we live these processes, but we live them unconsciously. As we study Kathara healing, we become aware that they exist. So we become able to begin to achieve a level of mastery over our subconscious knowing, where we integrate it to make it ours. Okay. Now, this one. The relationship between wave strata and variance in Part-2 phasing, flashline sequences, I'll talk about that in a second, okay, within dimensional frequency bands, creates holographic refraction of consciousness. Energy that allows perception of an externalized three-dimensional holographic illusion for consciousness focused within the scalar grids of 15-dimensional time matrix. That's a mouthful, isn't it? Okay. This part is saying, first of all, the relationships between wave strata. If we look at each dimensional band as a wave strata, that's part of a larger set of wave patterns, frequencies or wave strata, frequency bands. Okay. Variance in Part-2 phasing, we got Part-2 phasing before. That was how fast the little scalar standing waves flash off and on. We didn't touch this word yet. Flashline sequences. Okay, I'll touch that in a minute. But the relationship between wave strata, and let's just take this part, Part-2 phasing, within the dimensional frequency bands, is what creates refraction of energy units that allows for projection of external reality, an external reality field. These are the core mechanics that anybody that's built themselves as masters on the planet in the past 500 million years, these are the secrets that were once held in all of the religions that told of the mechanics of manifestation, of how Source comes into being. It explains our connection to Source, to God, in energy terms, in the terms of basic laws of energy. So there's a lot more to this. Now, with this, flashline sequences. A flashline sequence is a sequence of, if you have a string of scalar waves, right, little columnar waves lined up in a row, and then you have another one. If you look at each dimension would be like a string of little scalar waves of a specific height, Then the next dimension would have a different height, but it would also be a string of scalar waves, all the way up to 15-dimensional scale. Now, each dimension of those little strings of scalar waves would have its own pulsation rhythm, which means it would have its own rhythm of turning on and off. That would be its flash line, how fast or slow. Say, dimension 1 would turn off and on, this fast, on, off, on, off. Dimension 2 would do this, on, off, on, off, on, off, on, off, on, off. The higher you go up the dimensional scale, the faster the flash line sequences are, which gives you higher frequency in terms of how frequency is defined even here, as far as the wave bands go. All right, so the flash line sequences refer to each dimensional band and how fast its little scalar standing waves turn on and off. Now, we talked about before, and I'll emphasize again, when a scalar standing wave turns on, it goes into oscillation, which means it's transmitting energy, which means it's pulling energy from the unified field and pulling it into manifestation. When it turns off, it's going into a state of vibration, where it's holding energy back. That's when it disappears out of manifestation. So it's the process of pushing energy into manifestation and turning it off. And this is the whole structure of the hologram itself. Our body and everything in the universe is built on a series of flashline sequences interacting with each other at very specific ratios. You don't need to understand the ratios, which could go into like time measurements that we don't even have here right now on the planet. They're so infinitesimally small. We have nanoseconds, and I think they're like a billionth of a second. They're big compared to the time increments that are used in some of these systems. You don't need to understand the time increments. What it does help to understand is that your body and the universal body is being, if you look at it, as a big grid of light, each dimension having a certain line of light that pulse down and off at a different pace, you're getting to understand what your template looks like and how it functions. Energy in, bringing it in, expressing the manifestation, flash on, taking it out of manifestation, flash off. And it's a constant, perpetual feed of energy through each dimensional band. When we get into chapter 2, we'll get into what that means to you and your body. For dimension 1, you would have your physical body range. This is where literally your physicality starts to build up from. And that would have a certain pulsation. Dimension 2 is where what's called your emotional body would come from, where the qualities that we experience as emotion come from a certain area of our consciousness that has a specific form of energy in relation to the anatomy that corresponds to dimension 2. It's considered the telluric or elemental level. So as we start to understand here, flash line sequences and part-2 phasing, how fast they're turning on and off, we begin to understand literally, as we take it into the next chapter, what our body systems are composed of. When you start to understand what they're composed of, and then start to understand how they're supposed to work, this is the big one. Not how they're working now. Scientists looking at how they're working now and saying, oh, it's supposed to be like this. No, it isn't. If we know how a thing is supposed to work, then we can tell where it's not working properly and why, then we can fix it. That's why it becomes really important to learn just the basic structure of understanding how your system is functioning. A lot of this information you don't have to learn, you don't have to memorize, but it helps you an initial understanding to get to the next level that we talk about, where you understand these kind of things. So we simply have the relationships between waves and frequency bands, and variance and particle flash line sequences, each dimensional pulsation rhythm turning on and off the scale waves. Creates holographic refraction of consciousness/energy, not because they're the same thing, consciousness and energy. Holographic refraction is simply like if you have a series of flash lines going this way, and then another series crosses over at this angle, and another series here. It starts to bend light. It starts to create interrelationships between each flash line sequence that would be a separate dimension. And in that bend, there is electromagnetic fields, those are in the Merkaba fields, are created that allow for a picture to be translated out into manifest form. It's kind of like if we were the computer mind in a computer. A computer, you give it a certain set of mathematical programs, and then it will put this image on the screen for you. Science already knows how to do that. They can, they're even doing virtual reality where you can get in there and put the goggles on. And you can be the body that's in inside the hologram. This is very much like what we're already doing, but we're doing it all the time to the point where we don't even realize that's what we're a part of. We don't see the connection between virtual reality and we're in virtual reality. There's a part of your consciousness that is always the part behind the goggles. But we got stuck in the image. It's as if, did you ever see those little goggles they put on for the virtual reality stuff, and then you put on like a glove so you can do the hand movements when you're in that little image of the stuff in there? It's just like that. We have this huge consciousness that's our Christos avatar level identity, in the higher dimension of our own consciousness, that put itself in, just like we could project our mental intention into that little figure in the virtual reality glasses. You have to get the screen to do it. Projected us in. But then it was as if we got cut off. And the person, if you were sitting there with your goggles on and projected in, all of a sudden you forgot that you were the person with the goggles. And you got totally immersed within this holographic dimension of running around as a virtual reality person. Now you realize there was a part of you back there still running the equipment. It was keeping you in there. That's how we are right now, running around. We don't remember that we were the person behind the goggles. We got lost in the program. When we begin to understand, if we don't understand that it's a hologram, that it's a virtual holographic dream state, whatever you want to call it, we will always feel a victim to an outside environment that appears to be larger and more powerful than we are as individuals. If we will feel that we are powerless to change things, we will feel that we will not be able to feel the reality of our power. Now, power is important. We've been taught with religious distortion that we are not entitled to have power, that only God can have power, or ETs if you never play God can have power, whatever. We're taught to fear power, that it's a bad thing. These things aren't true. Now, you can abuse power, and that is not a good thing. That is a bad thing. Basic power is having the recognition that you are a child of God. No matter who you are, Jesus was not the only child of God. He came to show us here that we all are. If you realize that, you realize that you were imbued with the will and the desire of Source. You're created in the image of Source as a creator, which was intended to know its power and use its power well to create within the hologram. We are entitled to know. A lot of people get scared when they're faced with power because we've been taught to be afraid of it, and we watch what power does to people in this world. We watch sometimes their governments and how corrupted they can become because they got too much power and they're not using it well. We need to realize that there's a part of ourselves, our higher dimensional consciousness, that holds the power, but it also has the knowledge on how to use it well. We need to learn to trust ourselves again. And once we let ourselves have access to our personal power, that's when we start to realize that we're surrendering our personal power too. Most people are raised in a way that is simply common knowledge that we're at the mercy of our environment, and that usually we're at the mercy of our government and a number of other things. We're at the mercy of our bodies that get sick and fall apart on us. It's like we're really powerless when you look at what the illusion looks like. We feel like we're really, really powerless over a bunch of things that we're constantly fighting just to survive. That comes from being cut off from our higher levels of consciousness that know how to handle the illusion better. They know how to handle it because, first of all, they recognize that it is a hologram and that there are physics involved in creating any hologram. And a master of creating holograms is a master of someone who knows how to run the energy systems and how to program them right. So there's a whole level of mastery that you're capable of finding by just even understanding the surface level. Oh, I have this physics stuff going on inside of me, and actually reality is a dreamscape. If you have to assess what I just said in the last 15 minutes, in a real easy, quick to remember thought, oh, it's all a dream. Okay, and I have the power to fix it. Great. That is good enough for now. You know what I mean? You don't have to go into the physics. But when you start to grow, you'll want to know more how it works. That's because that's where your power comes from. It's one thing to know it's a dream and that you have the power to change it, but okay, there's a big space between dream and changing it. How? This is where the physics comes in. How? It teaches you the way to interact with, to understand, and then later to interact with the energy systems that are creating a hologram for you. And this works on a mass level as well. It's not, you have a tremendous degree of power if you learn to tap your higher consciousness and to work with the physics of the way the natural energy laws to create your own life the way you would like it to be. Things you thought were limitations don't have to be. However, we're also all here on this planet together, which means we will be affected. Just because you don't want the world to be a certain way doesn't mean you have the ultimate power to go change it for everybody else as well. You have the power to change your own hologram within the context of where the hologram is taking place, which brings in the collective hologram. We're all part of the world culture that is projecting its hologram outward. And there's a lot of distorted ideas and thinking and distorted emotions and uncontrolled emotion and a lot of harmful things that are flying around in the collective. These things will affect us because we're connected to them in energy. But we can be an influence of healing, even if we never learn Kathara grid on anybody personally. You can learn to run the frequencies of your D12 level of consciousness, your Christos level of consciousness, the specific frequencies, the flashline sequences of that dimension through your body, and you will become a healing force in the collective, even if you never talk to a person, just by having a presence on the planet, because your energy field is part of the larger energy field of the collective species, which is part of the larger energy field of the collective planet. Every one of us counts. There's nobody that's on the outside of this, and there is no middle ground. You are either assisting in the evolution of this planet, or you are assisting it to not evolve. You can't be neutral in this game. There is no such thing as, well, I just won't take a stand. You're taking one anyway. Choosing to not take a stand is making a stand, saying I'm not going to be responsible for what effect I'm having on the planet. Right? So there's a lot to this, but it comes down to the hologram and the physics. It's fun to go to sleep at night. Before you go to sleep, okay? I've had that even if you don't remember dreams very much. Well, I know I do dream or have in my life once or twice at least. Let's go to sleep with the thought that, wow, reality out there, this hardcore world that I thought I was part of, this is a dream. Talk to yourself like this. Say, okay, self, this is a dreamscape out here too. I didn't know that. I forgot that. Let's learn more about that. Take that thought with you, your last thought before you go to sleep at night. If you do that for a few nights in a row, you'll start to wake up with just direct cognitions. A little bit more information on that. Oh, certain things start to make sense. You'll start to make a bridge between your conscious mind here and the higher parts of your consciousness that you can only access while you're sleeping. You can access them while you're sleeping for a very specific reason. When you go to sleep, part of your consciousness shifts up in frequency and disengages from the DNA template. Part stays in to maintain the body, to maintain its biosystem so it doesn't die when you leave. But the majority of your consciousness moves up in frequency, up into the soul level cognitions, And it actually brings the frequency back in to feed the body. So that's why you need to sleep, or you get totally burned out, delirious, and eventually your body dies if you're sleep deprived. You are feeding your body by sleeping, because part of your consciousness is like a carrier. It goes up into dimension 4, dimension 5, dimension 6, wherever you end up. I mean, you can learn to control where it goes. Takes some of that frequency and brings it back in small doses into the body to give it some more life force current. If you use and realize the fact that every time you go to sleep at night is an opportunity to enter a wonderful learning center, you can really use your dream state. You don't have to analyze dreams. You know these books on dream analysis? Don't bother buying them. Because they're not going to tell you anything about your dreams. All right? They're going to tell you about certain similarities and things that psychologists have found and some psychics who think that they know. And they're not going to tell you anything about how your dreams are working or before. The person who has that information is your higher consciousness. And you have the ability to reach that higher consciousness. The easiest way first is through the dream state. Why? Because your DNA doesn't have to open up fully to bring some of it back. You can do a lot of work on the dream state that you can't even bring the memory back. Because if you take your consciousness from here, in dimension 3, put the body to sleep, move your consciousness into dimension 6, let's say, which you can do, which is disengaged from the DNA template. You have a set of experiences and learnings there, and you take an imprint back, and that's the imprint that would be memory. Right? You bring it back into the body. Now, if it's a 6-dimensional memory, but you only have 3-strand activation, guess what? You're going to have little tiny pieces of fragments of it that come in on the 3rd dimension, 6th subharmonic. All right? That's the only little bit of experience you'll remember. This is why dreams are chopped up in pieces, and you can never figure out what the heck is going on half the time because of the template distortions. You can learn by directing from here what you're going to do in the dream state, how to bring back the specific data you're looking for. And you'll bring back, it's like you're setting the template, saying, okay, let's find out what the hologram is like. Let's get more into feeling my world as, okay, if this is true, it's a waking dream, it's a dream state. I want to know that more. I want to feel that. I want to feel the freedom that has. Go to sleep with that thought. You set a template for where your consciousness is going to go, what type of information it's going to explore. And then that information, instead of being taken back randomly in little pieces, by setting that template, that idea, with specific words, before you go to sleep, when the information comes back that you found from the higher consciousness that would normally fragment so you couldn't get it back into the DNA as memory, will go into that original pattern. You will actually, as you will pass out and take your thought, okay, I will find this information, or I will experience my hologram more as a hologram. Take the command before you go to bed, set it, you move through it, bring back information, come back through it. You actually hit that exact same thought pattern when you're coming back through, and it will pull from that huge amount of data that you got that's too high frequency to pull. It will synthesize the pieces of it you need most to answer the original template. This is how you learn to start to create a circuit of awareness between your higher self and your consciousness here. You become your own information retrieval center. All right? When you begin to explore these type of things, it's very important to use what we call the Maharic seal. Now, this is one of the things, it's like a byproduct of using the Kathara healing program, where you're taught the Maharic recoding process. The word Maharic refers to the D12 frequency. It's actually the unified D10, 11, and 12 pre-matter frequency, or the Christos field frequency. When you use that current, there's a technique that, I'm not sure if it's in this manual. You can use, let me see the technique reference. I think it's technique 1 or 2. Hold on a second, I'm going to find out which one it is. Because it will, if you use this, technique 2A, the Maharic seal and the liquid light cleanse. That one will begin to pull up a part of your frequency. That's your D12 frequency. It won't sustain in your body fully until you can hold the full 12-strand DNA activation, which is going to take a lot of realigning the DNA strands because of the mutations around the planet. But if you do any psychic work or healing work without running a Maharic seal on yourself, you're asking for trouble. You're asking to get hurt. You're asking for astral field infiltration. Because you're not protecting the frequencies of your D4 level of anatomy, your D5, D6, D7, all the way to 12. There are forces of polarity from D11 down. D12 is the first point of non-polarized frequency. That's what hydroplasm is. It's a form of substance that comes into being. When right at the transition point, when polarity goes into non-polarity, or if you're coming down, where non-polarity starts to polarize. So with the D12 frequency running, even in subharmonics in your body, it creates a pillar of frequency that protects you from any of the negative side of the energy polarities from 11 on down. The negative energies I talk about can be random type energies that just have to do with environmental physics stuff in the interdimensional planes, or they can be other beings that exist in those other time and space-time locations that have intentions that aren't what you might hope they would be. When you run anything, even doing your dream work, you need to use some of the Maharic Seal technique. If you would even use technique 2A, well, when we'll get to that, we'll be running. That's one of the ones we'll be running tomorrow. If you use this before dream stuff, if you use it before psychic stuff, before healing stuff, you'll start to find, not only are you protected, but you'll start to find a more rapid integration of your higher consciousness. You will get more dream recall after a while of using it. You will get more lucid dreaming, where you find yourself fully wide awake in a dream state, and fully aware that you can change it, and you can move around in it. You will go from lucid dreaming into projection, where you will find yourself in your astral body roaming around in places, and eventually you'll get control. What is your astral body? Your astral body is the D4 level of your anatomy. It holds an imprint of what your physical body form looks like. And it is key to the fourth dimensional frequency gains, which means it's a body that goes on a fourth dimensional flashline sequence. A part of your consciousness that holds the body form on that faster fourth dimensional flashline sequence. Just like your three-dimensional body is holding the three-dimensional flashline sequences of D1, 2, and 3. So there's a whole progression, and it's a systematic progression of how you will expand when your DNA template is activated to allow your higher consciousness to come in. You'll start to get increased inner visual information. You will be able to see things before you get color in things. You'll just be able to see things and know that they are called see feeling, where you still see black when you close your eyes, but you see things beyond the blackness, even though you're not visually seeing them. You can identify all sorts of things. These are some of the things that come to you as your natural attributes of activating higher consciousness. And it all comes down to how the hologram works. If you want to do the next one. Okay. Yeah, here we go. We're going to get into pictures in a minute. I'll just go through these really quick.
Question.
Yes.
It's on the angular rotation of the particles thing. It shifts 90 degrees between each dimension. When you go through 4 dimensions, there's a 360-degree full turn. So does that mean that there's an overlap? It goes back to the same spin angles again and again?
Yes, they go back to the same spin angles, but at an octave higher, or which would be considered a harmonic higher.
The higher frequency then?
Yes, and it progressively jumps, each time it comes around to 360 shift, then it jumps up to a faster flashline sequence and does the same thing in that one, and then jumps up to the next one. Yeah. Okay. Universal planetary Kathara grids. Okay. The Kathara grid, which you'll see in a minute. Okay. I'm going to put this out as page 16, so I'll show you that in a minute. The Kathara grid is the first level of particle structure. Remember particle, those little particle, 5 units of energy? Okay. The first level of particle structure is a scalar organization that sets consciousness into dimensionalization. So the Kathara grid is the first level of order. Okay, if you're going to form this template, scalar template of manifestation, it's got to start somewhere. Right? It starts with one set of particle that form 12. Out of that, there's certain interactions that take place of fission and fusion within the particle and particle that create 12 fixed positions. Okay? The 12 fixed positions actually come from the primal light fields. So remember, we have the 3 levels of the energy matrix. We have source, 3 levels of the energy matrix, then 3 of the primal light fields, then 12 dimensions. The primal light fields are dimensions 13, 14, and 15. So there's actually 2 Kathara grids that the body connects to source with. The one we're working with here is the one you immediately need to know how to master, which is the one that runs from dimension 1 through 12. That one plugs you into the Kira-shaped primal light fields, the D13, 14, and 15, and the rest of it. Now, the Kathara grid is that first structure. If you were an artist and you were going to start a picture, drawing a picture, you had to start with something, right? Something was your first line or your first dot. There's your first 12 dots, and the lines that connect them are the first formation of what becomes the scalar grids that form the rest that the matter body and the template build up on. Okay? This does the core holographic template. So when we say Kathara grid, what we're saying is the core template upon which your matter system or the universal matter system is built. And it's a holographic template because the whole process is holographic projection of energy through refraction of energy. Okay? Now, the Kathara grid is the core holographic template for dimensionalization of the unified field. So this means it's not just something that's in your body or a bug's body. It's something in the whole universe. This is the structure of natural laws of the universe are here. Where the Kathara grid, the core holographic template, is a natural law, that formation. And there's a formula for it, but they won't release certain things in mathematical form right now because scientists would blow us all up very quickly if they had access to the formulas. All right, there's certain formulas that can take physics as it's known now and explain this. See, they're trying to teach us, our ancients are trying to teach us how to use this internally, not project it into external technology that you can destroy the universe with. If we were given these formulas in traditional scientific jargon of today, and the formulas that went with them, they would build things that would do horrible things. That's not allowed. So that information won't be given. What we are given is people who want to learn how to do it through spirit and with spirit, and want to remember their connection to Source and that they are a living, walking, breathing piece of Source. These would be the people who are entrusted with the knowledge presented in a way that makes it usable to them, makes it usable internally. That's why I don't spend a lot of time worrying about scientific jargon and proving it to the physicists. They want to learn. They're going to have to acknowledge, first of all, that there's something called spirit that they haven't quantified yet. But anyway, this is the Kathara grid, the core holographic template for the unified field, for the macrocosm and the microcosm. All things are built on it. That means when we take everybody to a D12 level, everybody in a Christo state looks like 12 points of light. This is kind of like when we think about all the hatreds we have toward other people. Their skin color is different, their shape is different, their country is different, or other species, that's a lowly life form. We can't work on it enough, we can abuse it. These attitudes that we have, because we look at ourselves and we see the hologram, we see the illusion, and we think it's the reality. When we start to get into the reality of it, all things are created on the same template. That is our commonality. No thing is more important or greater than another. They are all equal in the structure of universal law, of physics, and in the structure of Source. This does not mean that there are certain beings aren't more advanced in their understanding than others, because there obviously are. That simply means a being that would be more advanced would have more of its higher dimensions of consciousness integrated into its body, probably because it had a bigger DNA template that could hold more frequency. The smaller animal forms on our planet have smaller DNA templates. They don't have 12-strand DNA templates. Most of them have 3 to 5. Some of them have 6. The ones that have 3, that have over 3 strands, could actually go through a portal with you. If you were going to walk through a Stargate, let's say, and you wanted to take your cat or your dog. If your dog was a species of dog, a type of dog, that had more than 3-strand template, and the template was working properly, if you did Kathara healing on it, if the template straightened out, you could walk through with your animal. If not, they spontaneously combust. Yeah. And so would you, if you tried to go through a Stargate, if your DNA was not up to holding the frequencies that were conveyed in a Stargate. So there's a lot of interesting things about understanding the Kathara grids. Because it's through the Kathara grids that we learn to control the DNA template. Because the 12 points of consolidated or compounded frequency that form each of the 12 centers on the Kathara grid directly hold the program, the mathematical, geometrical program for the DNA template, which holds the program for the chemical manufacture of DNA, which holds the genetic substance upon which the body's going to function, as far as chromosome structure and what the body systems will do upon that chromosome and gene structure. The Kathara grid is the key, and that's why it's the first level in Kathara healing. We're getting into more advanced stuff after this, to get into using symbols and some really fun stuff that we'll play with at the end after we do Kathara 1. We'll do the intro to Kathara 2. And there's one really cool, like where you stand on symbols in your room, which was a new one that they just did, so we'll be doing that. But for now, we'll go back to why it's important to learn about the Kathara grid in the body. It's your key to understanding your anatomy and what to do with it. It's also your key to understanding how the universe is structured, the basic formation of it. Because if you hear somebody talk about stargates, and your brain goes, that's not real stuff. That's just sci-fi stuff on TV. Our scientists know there's the stargates. Well, they think there's no stargates because they don't know the planetary Kathara grid. Because each of those 12 points that in the body represent one thing, hold templates, hold blueprints, and allow for frequency to run in the body. The planet body has the same thing. Those 12 points in the planetary geography form stargates, which are crossover points between flashline sequences from the different density levels, which means a biology could, if one of those points in the planetary body were opened, move through into another space-time location or another density level. It's kind of like one verifies the other or negates the other. You either do or don't have a Kathara grid in your body that operates in a certain way. But if you do, it implies that the planet does too, which implies that the planet has stargates. Well, you can look at it the other way. I don't have a Kathara grid in my body, and then the planet doesn't have stargates either. Which, if you really believe you don't have a Kathara grid in your body, you're probably better off not being here in this workshop, because it's all about learning how to use it. There's a proof factor of these type of teachings that can't be given on the outside. And there's lots of things that could be done to prove things, but that's not where proof comes from. There's one person in the universe that can prove anything to you at any time. That's you. This program will give you enough information that if you play with it, and you really want to know, you'll start opening up experiences in yourself that will be your own proof. It would mean so much more for you to say that. Oh, it's time right? Okay. I just got the proof sign. Yeah, that's different, isn't it? Inside. What is that? Oh, okay. Okay. When we get back, I'm going to put this up on the board just so they can look at it for a minute. Go to page 27. Can you put that up? I just want you to see this real quick before we go off. It's a good image to hold in mind while we go to try to have dinner this time. Hopefully it will work this time. I can think, oh, it's coming. Yeah. When I talk about the 12 points in the Kathara grid, this is the structure I'm talking about. And if anybody has studied Kabbalah at all, you'll notice it's very similar. But you'll also notice instead of having 10 Sephiroth, is what they're called in Kabbalah, there are 12. Some Kabbalistic systems that happen to be on Nazi origin don't use 10, they use 11. But it's still not the 12 that is the original true teachings. You'll also notice that our numbering is reversed compared to one in the Kabbalah. Because the Kabbalah teachings, unfortunately, have been distorted from their original, which were these, and they have been taken to take you down into matter instead of getting you back out of matter. So they reversed the whole thing, and the size. So the stuff you see in the Kabbalah on this is actually reversed. And it's, that's if you want to get out of manifestation or gain your power back and expand, this is the system you use. All right, it takes you from bottom to top, up and out, so down here to up and out. The other one takes you down into matter and keeps you locked there. So this grid, it doesn't matter if it was ever in the Kabbalah or not, which it was. This grid is important because through understanding this, that not only do you have the keys to your own body, but those of you who are interested in planetary grid work, the potentiality of, oh my God, I could really walk through a stargate sometime in this lifetime? It's a possibility. This is the key to understanding how all of that works. So I would say, I guess we have to go to dinner, and let's try to enjoy our dinner here. And what were we, 6:15, or 5:45, we're supposed to go in, is that?
Yeah, anytime now.
Anytime now, okay.
We're having a break till 7:15.
Oh, okay.
Is that right?
All right, yeah, all right, 6:15, yeah, until 7:15, we'll do that. Particle self. We're in the particle universe, the particle universe. So we would learn to use ours. You're affecting all of the others. This gets into multiple cells, which gets into really heavy stuff. If you want to take that times it by 12, where on the universal level, this implies that there's lots more than one universe. We have our 5 harmonic universes in one time matrix. There's actually 24 time matrices that have that. So it's, creation is very large, right? But it takes place in the same space.
Do you want us to visualize this flat or three-dimensional now?
Just as it is right now. Yeah. And also, when you visualize this flat, you're giving a certain set of mathematical coordinates. If you double that, or add dimensionality to it, this goes with any of the symbols we use. If you change them and make them three-dimensional when they're supposed to be flat, you're changing and amplifying mathematical coding. That can be good for some things, But it can be now appropriate for when you're especially first integrating the knowledge of this. You need to start with, let's say this had 144 megabytes of information, right? I'm using megabytes as just a quantity measure. Where if you use 2 of those together, it'd be double that. 3 of those together, it'd be triple that. If you're trying to get into your DNA and awaken your DNA enough to allow the consciousness and the understanding to come into your body so you can have it and hold it, this conscious awareness, you don't start with 3 times because it will come in to the DNA template and the codes below it aren't activated. The information will not be able to come in. So you build the information. You start with flat ones, and then you work on it. We do the same thing with, we'll get into in this section, something called the Hierophant symbol. It's a mathematical program that, to us on this level, looks like a particular shape. It looks like the Star of David. It was always a very sacred symbol because of its significance in relation to mathematical programs and the dimensions. It didn't just belong to the Jewish people. It belonged to everybody. Now, we'll learn, we started with using a 6-pointed flat Star of David. We used the Hierophant, which we'll talk about a little later. At this point, we moved up to using increments of 12. We're up to 144 pointed 3-dimensional star when we're running certain currents. That means you're bringing in more and more octaves of those same currents, or subharmonics of those currents. So it is important to, if you see the diagram flat, unless it specifies someplace there in the writing around the diagram that you would use this in like a 3-dimensional way, use them flat. There's a reason for it. Okay? Now, let's see. Okay, I'll go through these points since they're worth going through the words. The next one, please. Excuse me a second, I'm going to take my jacket off. For a change. First time I've been hot since I've been here. Yeah, coming from Florida, this is like something new. Yeah. First one says, the 5 primary scalar templates of dimensionalization are formed on scalar shields composed of sets of 3 dimensions. I'll take that part of the sentence first. I have these really long sentences when I do this. 5 primary scalar templates of dimensionalization. We think of the 5 harmonic universes. That would be a scalar template. In the 15-dimensional structure, we have 5 sets of 3 dimensions. And what they are sets of are scalar grids. Grids of energy formed by little scalar wave points. So we have 5 primary scalar templates. When we refer to a 3-dimensional scalar template, it's called a shield. That's just a translation of an ancient word that they were always just simply called shields. The shields are the core template that anchors the rest of the energy systems built upon it. Now, each shield, that would mean you have, in your whole 15-dimensional structure, you have 5 shields. If you're dealing with just dimensions 1 through 12, getting yourself from physical matter into pre-matter liquid light, you only have 4 shields. Because shield 1 would be dimensions 1, 2, 3. Shield 2, 4, 5, 6. Shield 3, 7, 8, 9. And shield 4, 10, 11, 12. The word shield becomes important when we begin to work with the energy. Because when we get into chapter 2, we're going to be working with something called the Mahara shield. That is the 4th shield, the one that holds your divine blueprint. Now, the planet has a divine blueprint. We have it. Every manifest form has a divine blueprint. What a divine blueprint is the original scalar template of dimension 12 that the consciousness went from a gaseous waveform to begin its process of solidifying into density. The original pure pattern before polarization took place. That pure pattern holds in indelible form exactly what your creation blueprint was. You came in as a consciousness. You came into time as a consciousness that had a purpose and a reason for entering manifestation. You took on a certain form in order to fulfill that purpose. And you know why? All of this information is stored within the part of your anatomy that's called the Mahara shield. And that's the part of you that corresponds to dimension 10, 11, and 12. So in the work that we do, we use the Mahara shield and activate it manually. In the natural evolutionary process, if we weren't going to go on manual conscious evolution, we would have to activate all the other shields first. We have to do shield 1 that corresponds to the density 1 body, then shield 2 that corresponds to the soul level, which is dimension 4, 5, 6. Then you have to do the 3rd level, which we call the oversoul shield. where you have to do dimension 7, 8, 9, and then finally you would get to activate the fourth shield. That's the slow way to evolve. That's the way that if we're not in a situation where there's certain things happening on the planet, we actually stop the evolution of this species if they don't go well. If we weren't worrying about crisis intervention, which we are right now. That's why this information is being provided, to give us the power to heal ourselves and the planet. If we were just going to take the long way home, we would simply, the DNA would do it by itself through interacting with the planetary grids and the life force currents that come down through the unified field through the planet into our bodies. We would progressively activate each shield. Each scalar template, three-dimensional scalar template, is connected to 3 strands of the DNA template. So strands 1, 2, and 3 would go with your first shield, the dimension 1, 2, 3, density 1 shield. The shields are important on both a personal level and on a planetary level because they are what hold the little points of frequency in the form of scalar standing waves that exist in various levels of matter density and frequency that hold the template of your manifestation or the planet's manifestation into form. They are the anchoring rods or the armature upon which the molecules and atoms flesh out to form the matter. So if you interact with the shields and you change them in a certain way, you will change what the manifestation is. The shields are connected to and controlled by the 12-tree grid. So these pieces of self are all connected. These pieces of self are a microcosmic version of the pieces of planet or the pieces of galaxy. The planet has shields as well. The density 1 shield of Earth is called the telluric shield, and it's composed of dimensions 1, 2, and 3 frequency. In those frequency bands, density 1, Earth is called Earth. Then there's the density 2 level of the planet. That's dimensions 4, 5, and 6. Earth in density 4, 5, and 6 is known as Kathara. That's where these words come from in the New Age movement. What are these people poised? Like one calls it Gaia, one calls it Terra, one calls it Earth. What are we talking about here? Are they all the same planets? They're different octaves of the same. When we get to density 3, the third shield of the planetary grids, the third Earth shield, is actually the Gaian shield. That's where Gaia comes in. And the fourth shield of the planet, which is its Mahara shield, which contains its original divine blueprint, which is the evolutionary blueprint for the entire planet, how it was supposed to evolve, what it was created to do, and how the perfect imprint of the species evolution was supposed to take place on that planet. That corresponds to dimensions 10, 11, and 12, and it's called the Shield of Aramatana. Aramatana is a word, it's a name, it's an ancient name for a stargate that was part of the Lyra system. When we look up into the sky at night, when we get into using the 12-tree grid on the macrocosmic level, we find that each one of those 12 points corresponds to a stargate, not only on Earth's body, but within the 5 densities of matter. And actually, it goes up to dimension 12, and there's another set of them that goes up higher. So the Shield of Aramatana is the planetary divine blueprint. We each are a piece of that, because we're a part of the planet. We have within the planetary divine blueprint a piece of our own divine blueprint, our own heart shield. And that's what we're going to be using to reset what's gone wrong in the human biology. This is when we're doing the planetary grid work. What we're doing is resetting what is blocked and misaligned in the planetary Kathara grid. But when we bring it down to a personal level, we can understand how the Kathara grid and the energy systems built on it work in the personal level. It's much easier. We can look in the mirror and say, okay, that's my body, and this is located here, this is located here. You can understand these energy dynamics in your body. You will automatically be able to understand how they work in the planet. You will automatically understand how they work in the galaxy as well. So it's an easy way to start. By understanding yourself, you can understand the rest. We can also start with Templar mechanics and bring it down to the body. But that tends to be going from here and bringing it to here. It's a little easier to bring your focus up this way. Kind of like an inverted here, when you start small and you expand your awareness, that's what we're doing. All right. Can you get back to this? There's a word. Hula. Okay, it's not vacuum cleaners either. Okay. The 5 primary scalar templates of dimensionalization are formed on scalar shields composed of sets of 3 dimensions, which form 5 3-dimensional spheres of energy called Huba bodies. This is on a planetary level, on a galactic level, on a personal level. Huba bodies are three-dimensional, light-sound spheres of energy that form off of the imprint of the shield that they're connected to. So you have a Huba body that corresponds to your density 1 cell. One corresponds to your density 2 cell, to your density 3 cell, to your density 4 cell. These form levels within the auric field, those fields of energy that extend around the body, that people who work with chakras tend to realize that there's an energy field that extends around the body as well, not just the chakras. These are where those levels come from. They manifest through the shields, which are the core templates that exist. And if you were going to visualize a shield, and you're going to see it with higher sensory perception, it would look like a flat disc, a circular disc of energy, that some of them are positioned on horizontal planes, and one of them is positioned on a vertical plane, that spin, and they look like they're composed of millions of little lights, little tiny dots of light. They are the scalar, standing waves. Each one of them has its own rhythm of flashing on and off, and its own rate of spin. These are all connected to Merkaba mechanics, which we'll get into at the end. So when we're talking about shields, we're also talking about the spheres of energy that are surrounding, electromagnetic energy that are surrounding the body, because they are created from the four primary shields, the lower shield, and then the fifth shield, which corresponds to the primal light fields that you don't have to worry about until you understand the first 12 dimensions of it. Now, when we get into the advanced things of, even in Kathara 2, the intro, we get into a little bit about how to open the body to be able to bring in some of the density 5 primal light field frequency. Because that is the frequency you need if you're going to do planetary grid work. If you can't, you need more than the D12 frequency. That opens the grids, the planetary grids, but you need to be able to run through primal light fields, hold enough current. You can heal and help to heal another person with just D12 frequency alone, or any other subharmonics used with D12. But if you want to affect the larger planetary shields, you need to be able to run the stronger currents. We'll get into the currents when we get into Kathara level 2, which will be the last thing after we get through Kathara level 1. We'll get into that. But it's enough to know that you have 5 shields, 4 of which you need to be concerned with now. They each correspond to a matter density level. Shield 1, gross physical matter density, holds that in imprinted form. Shield 2 corresponds to semi-etheric matter density. Shield 3 to etheric matter density, and Shield 4 to pre-matter density. That's a very simple system, and each of those shields forms 3 spheres of energy, or 1 three-dimensional sphere of energy. If you're going to look at yourself with, pretend you're going to take a photo of yourself where you see your energy fields but you wouldn't see your physical body, you'd have like a blank spot, a little silhouette where the physical body is that you see in a positive form right now. Pretend that's a negative, you don't really see that. You would see these, they actually form as, they're spherical ellipses. There's a little bit of elongation to them, where they're almost like egg shapes. You see them around the body, and some of them, when you get to the higher level, or Shield 4, they extend literally hundreds and hundreds of miles out into space, where you're literally connected to the universe through these things. So there are some parts. I will show you some diagrams as we go along of what, how you can conceptualize these. Oh, there are those parts I have, okay? Because it's easier when you see them in the diagram. Now, the Kathara grid and the multiple levels of the morphogenetic structure. Now, morphogenetic is another word for core template. Okay, so they're kind of used synonymously in the text. When I talk about a morphogenetic field, I'm talking about that scalar wave blueprint. All right, so it's the same thing. Morphogenetic field is a term that some scientists, particularly those playing with quantum, they tend to use that word here and there. It's kind of like the energy field behind it, is I think as far as they've gone, in saying what morphogenetic means. There's this unseen energy field that creates structure. They've gone that far in some of the quantum science people on Earth. With this system, we go much further than that. We show you exactly what is that structure behind the manifest form. So morphogenetic structure is simply referring to the core template behind the manifest matter that's perceivable. Okay. So the Kathara grid and the multiple levels of core template, morphogenetic structure, built upon it, is the causal element behind and within all manifestation. And thus the core holographic template, through its imprint for health, can be restored to biology. Now what that means is, the Kathara grid, 12-3 grid, and the various levels of the template that form upon it are the element of cause, the causal element. That means they cause the rest to happen. The rest would be the effect, where they are the cause. If you want to change an effect in the body, you would go to its cause, and you would shift it there. And that's where you would get lasting change in the body. Person's body, planetary body. So if we can understand when we're dealing with the Kathara grid and the levels of the template that's built upon it, we are going to the causal element. We're going right to the core of what is manifesting the effect upon it. It's the core of the holographic template. Again, the holographic template is that blueprint that we are using to manifest our perceivable experience in three-dimensional holographic form. All right? Now, down here it says imprint for health. It says core holographic template through which the imprint for health can be restored to biology. In the imprint, you have, in that blueprint, the scale-away blueprint, it's composed of the shields. There is the fourth shield, the Mahara shield, that corresponds to the pre-matter template, your original form that you manifested through. It's not just you that manifested through it. Remember when I said you have 1,728 cells simultaneously in different time vectors? They all manifested through it. That is your Christ identity. Your Christos identity is your D12 level of cells that contains in one piece all of the awareness of those smaller cells that you have to break yourself down into to get yourself in the manifest form. That core blueprint holds the imprint for health, which means the perfected body form, which means the original imprint of what it meant to be human, which means 12 strands minimum, the ability to have eternal lifespan, the ability to manifest and demanifest at will. These are part of the divine blueprint of the human species. When we're dealing with the Kathara grid, that Kathara grid holds within it, at the D12 level, the full imprint. And if you can bring that imprint back into awakening, awaken those energy signatures in your body, in your Kathara grid, in your DNA, you will progressively heal and realign any distortions your lower shields have picked up. Because this is what has happened to people right now. This is why humans can't walk through walls and they can't manifest and demanifest at will anymore, and they die. The reason they die is because this natural process of being able to, when we talk about shifting, angular rotation, particle spin, and all of that is controlled by the DNA template, which is controlled by the Kathara grid. If there are distortions in the Kathara grid that block the natural flow of frequency interface, it will block it in the DNA template, it will block it in the biology. We have been literally, we're doing death by density here. We have been densified to the point where we can't bring in most of the universal life force currents. Because of that, our bodies are finite. And they break down when they're not supposed to. As we move through this into Chapter 2, we'll find out what the body is supposed to do. There's certain things in 12, 22, 33, and 44 that were supposed to happen in an eternal body that don't happen because of what's wrong with